It seems that Mitch Marner's time is coming to a close for the Toronto Maple Leafs as more and more reports and rumors are coming out revealing that the Leafs are taking calls on the star. And not only are they taking calls, they seem to be receiving a ton of them. So we're going to break all that down and discuss the report which reveals that a trade could be coming. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're a part of the 80% who aren't subscribed, you want to support Darius and I's goal to 10,000 subs, make sure to hit that button. 10,000 subscribers has been a huge goal of ours for a while, and we're producing daily Leafs content, so we're going to keep you updated with the latest. So thank you guys, and thank you for hitting the sub button anyway. You guys have been great. Darius, a lot to discuss today. A couple days ago, Craig Berube hired as the head coach. Now we kind of know that moves are starting to come. Obviously, they haven't happened yet. We're going to get, hopefully, some more news over the next few days and kind of just get some more clarity over the next few weeks regarding Mitch Marner. But it seems like a trade could be coming and could be coming soon, maybe by Nick Kypreos. You can see this part at the bottom here of the Toronto Star Sports. It's time for the Leafs to move on from Marner and Tavares. Other NHL teams will, and the big thing here, and already have, came calling. So this kind of reveals that teams are calling in on Mitch Marner, and the Leafs, as we know, if you checked out our video yesterday, are looking to move out of probably Mitch Marner's contract, him as an asset, him as a player, especially in light of bringing in Craig Berube, a bit of a more hard ASS coach. But Darius, what are your thoughts on this? Could be a move coming from Marner, and we kind of knew this, but a lot to go over.
And I don't know if I'm reading too much into it because obviously we know the whole discourse around Mitch Marner. But if you want to bring up the screenshot one more time, he does say other teams will and have already come calling on Marner's and Tavares. So I wonder if teams are actually calling on Tavares as well. I think that's pretty interesting. Little tidbit there. I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but this was from a little while ago. So it's already starting. I'm sure teams are calling around because Mitch Marner, Leafs fans and the media and everything are, I think, discrediting Marner a little bit. I think he's worth a little bit more than what people are putting out there right now and all the trade proposals, which we'll get into not only today, but in other videos. But he still holds his fate in his own hands. And obviously, he is very skilled. So I just wonder if both of them are getting, or if the Leafs are getting calls on both of them. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy now again that Craig Berube has been hired, so now we can start focusing on these things that reports are coming out. The Tavares thing is interesting. I just don't see them necessarily doing it, but I understand some teams that would, I mean, Colin Tavares maybe, but he wants to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. He wants to live in Toronto. He wants to raise his family in Toronto and live there, so he's probably going to stay a Maple Leaf, but there's just a lot of different ways that moves could happen. And Darius, this is an interesting one, which we'll get into in a second. But let's go on what Elliotte Friedman has to say about Mitch Marner first here. And he says he has control over the situation, yes, so there's no move clause. But I think that there's a couple of questions here. One, how does he feel? Has he gotten to the point where he thinks long-term is better for him to be somewhere else? He was nervous during these playoffs, and he basically goes on to say that he never really had his big moment, especially in this year's playoffs. And this is what he says here. Yes, I do think it's possible he will think about waiving his no-move clause, but it doesn't mean he tells the Leafs, get me out of here, based on what he said in his comments in the right after they lost. Maybe he wants to stay, but I do think there's at least a Marner collective, as in the people around, will decide if it's better if he goes somewhere else. And I think that's the case. Again, if you checked out a report from yesterday, or a video covering the report from yesterday, we didn't do the reporting, from Chris Johnston, he basically says that Marner probably is going to get traded. The Leafs want to explore moving on from him. The Leafs say, and Marner wants to stay in Toronto maybe. That's where it gets a little bit iffy, but it seems like all signs are pointing to him at least being willing to move his no-move clause if it's in the better good for both teams and his future going forward as a player.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a bit of a joint venture if it does happen. It's not going to be a situation where the Leafs say we absolutely have to trade you to these teams or whatever it is, and Marner's not going to come to the Leafs and be like, get me out of here. It's not going to work like that. It might be the team saying, give us your list, and Marner going, you know what, I could use a change of scenery. Because I thought that was pretty interesting too. Elliotte Friedman brought up he was nervous during these playoffs because he knew the writing was on the wall that you had to have a moment, you had to perform, and he didn't again. So we're at the point where this is where we're at now. We have to move on, I think, if you're the Leafs. So I think it's going to be a bit of a joint venture where it's like, all right, let's work together. We'll get you a spot, and it'll help us because we're going to get a return. No matter what team, I shouldn't say no matter what team, but most teams will be able to give a pretty good return for Mitch Marner, and they'll want his services as well. So I think it's more likely than not it does happen because a lot of people are leaning towards, yes, he has a new no move clause and no trade clause, but not a lot of people are talking about the fact that maybe he wants out. Maybe he doesn't, it's not working here. Maybe he wants to find success elsewhere too.
And obviously, he said in his post-game comments that he'd be open to returning, but we don't really know how that's changed now since new coach. We've seen players request out because of coaches before. But another thing to keep in mind, he has 1 year left on his deal. But any team that's trading for him at this point, you would assume he'd be willing to extend there because he's waiving his no-move clause to get there, which is why some teams, depending on how long the list is, either could lower the value or increase it. But he's a 100-point player. He's a great winger in this league, one of the best, in theory, in the regular season. So he's going to get the value that hopefully the Leafs want him. And people, again, we went over this a while ago. People aren't happy with him. He either looked hurt, disinterested. I think disinterested may be the word to use here. At the very least, he's just unable to perform in the playoffs. And you look at this here. This is the other side of it, right? There's other sides. It's not just everyone saying trade Marner. You look at all these things. There's a chance that Marner gets traded. He goes and wins a cup with whoever team. You trade to the Predators, they somehow win a cup there. But I don't know. Let's look over a potential trade target. Let's look over some other things now. This cap hit is hefty. It is $9.5 million over 7 years. But Elliot Freeman mentioned in the latest episode that he wonders if the Blackhawks' Seth Jones could be a potential trade target for the Leafs. Not an analytical darling, but this would be an interesting addition. It would also require more, I would assume, from the Blackhawks. Maybe a pick. I don't know. He's 28 years old, 31 points in 67 games last year. Huge cap hit, signed for the next 6 years. I mean, this would be if you checked out our video yesterday, you see talking about the overhaul of the defensive core. This would be that.
Maybe. I'm not sure Seth Jones gets it done. I think there would have to be a lot more pieces on both ends to get it done, first round picks and all that good stuff. But I could see Seth Jones as a Maple Leaf. But at the end of the day, it only saves you about $2 million in salary. And he's not a number one defenseman. You do need a number one defenseman, although he would look better with Morgan Riley than somebody with Lyubushkin. No disrespect to Lyubushkin, but he would look better with Morgan Riley. But I just don't think the value is there. I think more has to come back from Chicago, and then you're taking on more salary. And yes, you might be helping your team in other areas other than a winger, which you're a top end winger, which you already have in Nylander. And the salary, locked up there. So it's interesting. I just don't think it ends up working, but it's an interesting thought. I think there are better defensemen, more suited for the Leafs, not necessarily better, but more suited for the Leafs with lower cap hits and their puck movers that they can go after who would be more effective for the Leafs.
Yeah, I mean, a Seth Jones return would be interesting. It wouldn't be the best thing in the world, but I mean, it wouldn't just be a straight 1-for-1. There'd be a lot more happening than just Seth Jones, but it's an interesting target to discuss. And I mean, there's going to be a lot more targets to discuss over the next little bit. But Darius, is there any other target, a little sneaky Darius target that you want to throw out there before we wrap it up? Just one guy, or do you think that it's going to be interesting to see, or maybe a position of need that you think the Leafs should strive to get in a Marner trade?
Obviously, we keep hearing about the Saros trade. I think if you could get a goalie, a bona fide number one goalie for Mitch Marner, I think that's brilliant. I think that would be a great trade. What does that look like? I don't know. There's a lot of pieces there. We'll probably have a video on it. I think another one would be Calgary. Obviously, he would have to accept a trade to Calgary, but I think you get a goaltender who's a great goaltender as a stopgap until Dennis Hildeby is ready, and you can get another puck-moving defenseman in Rasmus Anderson, who's a great, he's a great defenseman. I think that would be great. Maybe you look at draft picks. Maybe something comes back from the Leafs the other way as well. So those two really spike my interest, but there is a lot of trade proposals coming out right now, which I'm sure we'll get into, but those two spike my interest for sure, because I think it solves immediate issues that aren't in the forward group, and then you can use the freed up salary to address those issues.
And let us know in the comments what yours is. We'll leave that there. We're going to have a lot more videos coming out regarding this topic, so we'll leave it there for now. Let us know what your thoughts are on Seth Jones, and also let us know if you hit the subscribe button, because we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Thank you guys for watching. Take it easy.